Senki Seshu Symphogear. You know what, I'm shortening that to Symphogear from now on if you don't mind. It's a peculiar series. It has enjoyed a decent amount of popularity over the last decade both in Japan and the West, but never quite enough to stand up there with the biggest of anime titles, but popular enough to have gotten 5 whole seasons over the course of 7 years. But if you were to look around in anime communities and were to ask people what some of their favorite anime is, there is a high chance you might stir a contingent of die-hard fans that will crawl out of the woodwork to tell you to go watch this show and tell you how amazing it is. And I agree, it is a great series and a lot of fun, and I would recommend you to watch it. So stop watching this video and go watch Symphogear instead, it's a great time. Alright, I'm getting ahead of myself. Well then, so what is this Symphogear, you might ask? Symphogear is what happens when you have a magical girl series, but instead slap on mechanized suits on your main cast members, and then weapons like guns, swords and buzzsaws, which can transform in any way the user wants to. You give their attacks stylized art inserts, add in a character song that the characters themselves have to sing during combat to power themselves up, all fighting off deranged scientists, evil organizations, and even gods themselves that want to rule the earth. Sprinkle in a little bit of character drama, some hints at Yuri, a bit of edge, and some child experimentation. And then top it off with non-stop action that keeps on escalating to unforeseen heights, and you have the weird little package that is the Symphogear series. The main characters, who all were introduced in the season where they make their first appearance, wield the titular Symphogears, to at least initially combat the creatures called Noise. The Noise being creatures that have been around since ancient times, showing up out of nowhere to attack humans because it is in their instinct to do so. When humans get touched by Noise, they spontaneously disintegrate on the spot, at most leaving a pile of dust behind. And humans are unable to fight these creatures off, as weapons do not affect them. And that is where the Symphogear users come into the story, to fight off the Noise and to protect humanity. The Symphogear is a device that creates a mechanized suit of armor, protecting the wearer from the Noise. And each of them are powered by a fragment of a mythological relic of some importance. For example, relics from Nordic gods like Odin's spear Gungnir and Elva's bow Ichiveil. Or Ame no Habakiri, the sword Susanoo used to defeat the 8-headed serpent Yamato no Orochi in Japanese legends. If anything, I'm surprised the series never went with something like Excalibur. You'd figure that is an obvious pick seeing how famous it is, but no, they didn't. And these gears are activated by a phenomenon called phonic gain, which is best explained as magical energy, generated by the act of singing. Look, don't think too hard about it. If there was one lesson to learn about this series, it is to not think too hard about things, or everything falls apart quickly. Besides, we are too early in this video to start questioning these trivial things, so don't worry about it, just go with it. Trust me, it doesn't get any less nonsensical. Also do take note that after transforming, they all get headphones, because they're noise cancelling, you get it? And each relic has its own song to activate, and the wearer of the gear just magically knows what to sing. The knowledge is imparted by the relic somehow, hidden in the wielders' heart or something. The franchise likes to use every mythology around the world, taking various elements from them and mixing them together into its own backstory, resulting in a story involving a race of aliens that created these relics and humanity itself, way back in prehistoric times, until they just disappeared one day. I'm sure you all know the joke about how pyramids in Egypt and South America were made by aliens. Yeah, it's pretty much just that trope. How anime is it? Very anime. It has all the tropes and then some more. It is cheesy and it has the power of friendship personified. And it is probably the best you don't think too hard about events that happen in the show. Things like, why is the same city destroyed twice over, yet people keep moving back into it? Or why do people keep going to concerts when during the previous ones attendees died? And how do these characters just keep coming up with new over-the-top attacks and combinations when we never see them plan or talk strategy? Don't think, just feel. Or watch and listen in this case since it is an anime. The story of Symphogear's development started at some point in the late 2000s, when Noriyasu Akamatsu, a song composer who worked on a few anime and some video games, got asked by a producer if he was able to write an anime story, since he was so good at writing songs. Now, I'm not sure what this producer was on, since even to me as an outsider to these kind of things, it seems pretty clear writing a story for an anime is vastly different than writing music. But what do I know? And so, After this event he started noting down ideas for a possible anime, things involving 5 heroines, a mascot, and an evil mastermind who wanted to control the moon. You know, the typical stuff. And in 2009 at a party for game developers, Agematsu met up with a friend of his, Akifumi Kaneko, a game designer for a whole slew of games, most notably the Wild Arms series. And he asked his friend for help, because despite all his notes and ideas, he had no idea how to write a proper story. Quite understandable, writing isn't as easy as it seems. His friend however didn't have the slightest idea how even to begin to teach him, so instead he took his notes with him, and in about a week he whipped up a plot which he wanted to use as an example. And it turned out that the example plot he wrote was pretty much what Agematsu was looking for in his story. And so he went to make a proposition at the higher-ups at King Records, a division of the company Shueisha, you know, the guys that run Shonen Jump. And he also asked his friend to help him with the project and be the producer of it, but Kaneko was skeptical as he said it probably would be greenlit, underselling his own creativity a bit. However, the then current producer at King Records had worked together with Kaneko on the project before, and that was the sole reason they ended up getting the chance to make Symphogear. And so the plans got approved, and they got a relatively small budget for a one-core anime consisting of 13 episodes to be animated by Satellite, and so the production got started. And it is like that in January of 2012, the world was graced by the first season of Symphogear. The first season of Symphogear takes place in the not too distant future. We're still not entirely sure when this is supposed to be, but everything looks relatively modern. Some of the technology is a little bit more advanced, and the best dates we get on screen is 20XX. But funnily enough, this will lead to some inconsistencies in later seasons, as Season 2 lists 2012 somewhere on the monitor. However, the 5th season says it's 2045, and that doesn't seem quite right. The first episode introduces us to our main character, Tachibana Hibiki, going to a concert of the wildly popular Y-Wing, a duo consisting of Kazunari Tsubasa and Amo Kanade, which turns out to be an experiment to get a phonic game, in order to power a relic kept underneath the stadium, planned by the Japanese Special Disaster Prevention Team, which I'm just going to call the Disaster Team from now on as it seems more appropriate. Disaster strikes during the concert, and everything goes wrong as the noise appear and start killing the audience. Kanade and Tsubasa transform using their gears in an attempt to save the innocent crowd. However, Kanade gets badly hurt in the action, and the bewildered Hibiki in a crowd gets hit by the shattered fragments of a gear, nearly killing her. Which prompts Kanade to use a superb song, a last resort move to generate a huge amount of power, but with the drawback that it is fatal to the user. She ends up defeating all the noise present, but loses her own life in the process, leaving behind a near-dead Hibiki and a depressed Tsubasa. And that is our introduction to Symphogear, straight to the point, and it shows you what the story will be about. The first 2/3 of the season is mostly focused on introducing us to and fleshing out the main characters, Hibiki and Tsubasa. After the events of the disastrous concert, Hibiki's life is better than ever. She is going to a new school that her idol Tsubasa attends, together with Kohinata Miku, her girlfriend, best friend and roommate, and life is looking up. Until one afternoon where she gets caught in a noise attack in the city, and the relic fragment she got hit by 2 years ago activate, granting her the power of a Symphogear. The special disaster team led by Kazunari Genjiro, take note of that last name, it will be important, and lead scientist Sakura Ryoko catches wind of this, and she gets brought on board, as they can use her gear and her powers to help save humans from the noise. Her gear is powered by the relic Gungnir. But since she only has the fragments of the relic embedded in her, and the actual relic was lost 2 years ago, she can only manifest the armor, not a spear. So she ends up training under Genjiro, teaching her various martial arts so she can fight with a fist instead. first, she has to keep this a secret from Miku, because the government does not want to risk leaking any important information. But this causes considerable friction in the relationship, as she often has to leave, and she doesn't have the time to spend with friends anymore. At some point, Miku spots Hibiki spending time with Tsubasa in the hospital, who is basically her colleague at this point in time. Thinking that the friendship is truly over, as she's getting sidelined for someone else, she tells Hibiki she's done being friends. And this causes Hibiki to be unsure what she's even fighting for, and she doesn't know what to do, until 2 episodes later where she ends up saving Miku from the noise. The two of them make up, and Miku agrees that she was overreacting and jumped to conclusions, and they are the best of roommates again, friends. This fills Hibiki with renewed energy, and now she's fighting to protect her friend from the noise. Hibiki is the kind of girl who rather talks things out with her enemy instead of punching them, to varying results. However, maybe she's a bit too naive, believing in the good inside anyone, even the villains, and she likes helping out people whenever she can. On the other side we have Kazunari Tsubasa, and she's a bit of a bitch at first, I'll be honest. She is very arrogant and cold towards Hibiki at first, and does not want to get along with her at all. Hibiki is just a newcomer that only lives because her friend Kanade gave her life, and by accident passed the power onto her, and someone as weak and naive as Hibiki does not deserve that in her eyes. It is not until after her run-in with a rogue gear user that trounces both her and Hibiki, and Tsubasa activating her superb song to fight him off and nearly dying, sending her to the hospital for the better part of a month, that she mellows out a bit. After that she comes to respect Hibiki a bit, for all the earnest hard work she's been putting in to clear up the mess she left behind. Tsubasa blames herself a lot for the sacrifice Kanade made, finding that it only happened because she herself is too weak, and she spent years training to make up for it. To the point that she becomes the definition of, when all the kids had a life, I study the blade. That blade being Ame no Habakiri, from famous Japanese myths, the first relic to be found and converted into a Symphogear. As a result, she has no friends and nothing else to care for in her life, but by the end of the season she fully trusts and is able to see Hibiki as a dependable friend, while they both fight together to protect the world. And she finds the courage to sing for an audience again by the end of the season, which is good for her. Maybe less so for the audience though, as we can see in later events in the series. The gear user I mentioned earlier is Yukine Chris. She gets introduced in episode 4, wearing the kinda silly looking Nahushian armor relic. Which got stolen 2 years prior at a disastrous concert, and later trades this in for a Symphogear of her own. She wields the mythical bow Ichiveil, and is the only gear user that has a ranged weapon. Now, I say bow, but it transforms into anything ranged, from crossbows, Gatling guns, to rocket launchers. Anything considered a ranged weapon goes. Chris was orphaned after her 2 parents died in a civil war in the fictional country of Valverde, and was considered one of the first candidate gear users. Until she went missing shortly after she arrived in Japan, taken in by the bad guy of season 1, Fine, for her personal plans instead. We'll get to her shortly. Chris is a little ball of anger and detests adults, mainly because of her parents going off chasing their dreams and getting killed in the process, not helped by the mental and physical torture exposed to by Fine. The 3 of them face off various times, at first completely kicking Hibiki and Tsubasa's ass, but after weeks of Hibiki training, the tables slowly start to turn. And after multiple failures, she ends up being abandoned by Fine, who takes the Neshutan armor for herself and leaves her out to dry. Eventually Genjuro finds her and takes care of her, slowly winning over her trust in the end. And after running into Miku and 2 helpless kids that she ends up defending from the noise, she starts wondering what the point of all this death and destruction was that she's been causing on Fine's behalf, and she has a change of heart. Faced with the destruction happening in front of her eyes, she decides to fight and defend the civilians instead, eventually resulting in her teaming up with Hibiki and Tsubasa and growing closer to both of them, eventually becoming friends, though still being a bit of a tsundere throughout the series. After 9 episodes of character development and a few fights, the bad guy of the season finally steps to the forefront and starts executing her plan. The bad guy, Fine, was a priestess of the custodians, those aliens I mentioned in the introduction of this video. But how, you might wonder, that was in prehistoric times, why is she still alive? Well, allow yourself to suspend your disbelief for a moment, as she herself ends up explaining it to the trio of girls facing her. She reveals that her soul is written away in the DNA of all humans, and lies dormant there until awakened by the exposure of any relic being activated. She then ends up taking over the person who happens to witness a relic activation, and inhabits their body until they die, only to be reborn the same way at a later date and time. For example, it is alluded to that Queen Elizabeth I was actually her, and a myriad of other people I can't instantly recognize from these silhouettes. Does it really make sense when you think about it? Well, don't you worry about the details. We're only at the first season after all. She also likes walking around naked. Why? Fan service. Why not? I'm not complaining. It is revealed that Fine has been posing as the scientist Sakura Ryoko for well over a decade, finding all kinds of relics around the world and creating various Symphogears out of them. She is also behind the assassination of the Minister of Defense that happens midway throughout the season, and she has been slowly altering the headquarters of the disaster prevention team into a weapon after that, under the number of fortifying their defenses. The headquarters that, by the way, are hidden under the same school Tsubasa, Hibiki and Miku attend. Why is it there, you might ask? Well, this actually gets explained in Season 2, as it turns out the school is a testing ground for new Symphogear users, as all the kids attending the school are potential candidates, and they are being monitored on their daily lives to see if a potential user shows up amongst them. Don't worry, the government authorized it, it's all perfectly legal. But Fine has reconstructed the headquarters into, at first sight, a tower, hidden under the school, which rises from the ground when activated in the finale. But it is quickly revealed that it is actually a giant cannon, powered by the relic Durandal, with its sole objective being firing at the moon to destroy it. Why does she want to blow up the moon, you ask? Well, it is because in ancient times she created a tower and she got punished by God. She did this because she wanted to reach the god she loved. Or well, God is a broad term here, as we learned that the aliens that once ruled the earth were considered gods by humans. If this was real love or just some cry for attention to be recognized isn't sure. However, this god did not agree on her plans and would not let a mere human stand on their level, and thus destroyed the tower, and cursed all of humanity by stripping them of their unified language. At least, that's what she thinks, as we get to learn what really happened in the last season, but we'll get there. And the source that keeps humanity's curse in power is on the moon, therefore she wants to blow up the moon. To get back at the god that wronged her, break the curse over humanity, and maybe rule the earth as a supremely powerful being. If the earth isn't destroyed by the fallout of the moon debris or the gravitational issues while it's gone, that might pose a problem or two to our rule. If you think that this is where the plot of Symphogear jumped the shark, don't worry. The plot will continue to circle the shark and somersault over it every so often for the other 4 seasons yet to come, because this is Symphogear, things can always get crazier, and they will. And so the 3 girls, having taken in all of this, obviously cannot let this happen. And out of all of them, Chris is the one that takes the initiative to prevent this from happening, probably also because she got used by her for years to do the dirty work. She uses a superb song and flies up in space, in a sacrificial attempt to blow up the tower from above, but it is too late and the tower fires. Her attack diverges the cannon fire, however, as it hits the moon but whiffs, and instead blows a huge chunk out of the moon, revealing ancient ruins underneath the surface. And as Chris, who spent all of her power, falls back to Earth, Fine scoffs, and she says she can just do it again. After all, who would invent a faulty weapon that can only fire once? Hibiki, overcome by the sadness because of this failed sacrificial move, ends up going berserk, unable to control all of her power, and ends up fighting Tsubasa in confusion. Taking a critical wound, Tsubasa ends up trapping Hibiki, before she goes charging over the tower in an attempt to destroy it, succeeding, but seemingly trading her own life to achieve this. Hibiki breaks down in despair at the sight of her other friend being seemingly killed off, and wonders what even the point of fighting is anymore. It is until the survivors inside the school, led by Miku, sing to her in an attempt to cheer her up, which in turn powers Hibiki with the most powerful of anime staples, the power of friendship and love. This ends up supercharging her gear, and it is revealed that the other two are still alive as well, and are also superpowered now. You better get used to it, this is going to happen a few times in the series, you've been warned. In desperation, Fine uses the relic that she controls all the noise with, along with the sword to Randall that was powering the cannon, transforming into a huge creature with incredible regeneration. And after a hectic fight, the gear users steal the sword and charge upon final massive attack that gets named after the season's opening song, while said opening plays in the background, defeating Fine once and for all. Or so it would seem, as she still has enough strength left for one desperation move, where she shoots a chain to the chunk of the moon that got dislodged earlier, and drags it to the earth, setting it on a course for impact before she disintegrates. Let's not question the speed of the chain, seeing it only takes a few seconds to travel that distance. It just somehow works out. Fine in the last moment takes Hibiki's words of not needing force to change the world to heart, and she decides that maybe she should not reincarnate anymore, believing in her words. That is nice and all, but we still got a chunk of the moon plummeting toward the earth that needs to be fixed. Try using Tank no Jutsu on that, Hibiki, I don't think it's going to work. And so, welcome to Symphogear's habit of introducing a last minute threat, even after the bad guy's been defeated. It will happen in every season, even if it might be a bit contrived. But hey, let's ride that hype one more time as Hibiki, Tsubasa and Chris fly to space and activate their superb songs in unison in order to blow up the moon fragment to save the planet. Their sacrifice succeeds, and now for the remainder of the series, the moon will have a nice ring of space dust surrounding it, making for a very striking visual. A month later we see Miku mourn at the grave of Hibiki, the very first scene the anime started with, lamenting the loss of her dear friend. Moments later she gets attacked by the noise, and inspired by Hibiki's bravery, she tries to save another woman before they both get backed into a corner, and moments before she might possibly die, she gets saved. By who? Well, Hibiki of course. It gets revealed that she and the other two gear users never died. And on that happy note, Season 1 of Symphogear ends. The creators got what they set out to do, and it is a fun ride till the end, if not a bit on the rougher side. Animation wise, the shoestring budget they got is noticeable at times, and might not be the best thing you've ever seen. Especially famous is this one walking scene from episode 3, which luckily got touched up in a home release. But even then there are some moments that still look a little rough. The soundtrack is good, and every voice actor gets a character instant song to boot, except Tsubasa who gets multiple. And her voice actor, Nana Mizuki, also does all of the openings for the entire series. The characters are likable, though sometimes I got annoyed at Miku for getting angry at Hibiki, fully well knowing she was legally not allowed to say anything from the government, but it's not the last I have to say about her. Also Tsubasa sometimes is a little bit too bitchy. It is surprising how much foreshadowing for later seasons there is, and how the lore of the franchise stayed consistent, considering there might have only ever been one season to this. It is also funny seeing how simple the transformation sequences are in the first season, as they seem to have been allocated a bigger budget each passing season after. What starts out as a simple 6-second sequence quickly turns into a 30-second affair in later seasons. Overall I'd say the anime succeeded in what it wanted to be, and I still think that in a vacuum Season 1 is my most liked season. It is all self-contained and it feels complete on its own, and the characters get more chance to develop and breathe, as especially later on it would just turn into one fight after another from start to finish. And even if you never end up watching the entire series, I'd still at least recommend giving the first season a try, even though it looks a bit dated now. It is especially funny how despite everything, the first season is the most grounded the show is ever going to be. It's only going to get more absurd from here on out. Oh, so much more absurd. The ratings were decently high and the Blu-ray sales were pretty solid, with the result that a year later, it would be announced that Symphogear would be receiving a second season. So in hindsight I guess it is a good thing they only had 13 episodes to work with, as quite some of the ideas had to be left on the cutting board, as they had way too many, but that resulted in them having more than enough to work with for the second season. Season 2 starts off right in the middle of the action, with Chris and Hibiki on a moving train fighting off the noise. They have been tasked with defending the US scientist Dr. Ver, whose full name we actually never get in the anime, so I had to look it up for this video and holy shit, what a name that is. They are tasked with escorting him and the Staff of Solomon, the relic from the first season that Chris and Fine used to summon noise with, to a US airbase inside of Japan. They succeed in their escort job and then leave the premise to go back to Tokyo, only for disaster to strike right away. Noise attack the military base, and in the aftermath it turns out that Dr. Ver and the staff are gone. Also as a side note, it is kinda morbid how the disintegrated soldiers just get vacuumed up in the aftermath. Like, damn. Just sucked up and disposed of like trash. That's pretty bad. Meanwhile back in Tokyo, Tsubasa is preparing for a concert together with the new up-and-coming American idol Maria to be broadcasted around the world. All goes well, until Noise appears during the concert under Maria's control, and she uses a Symphogear to transform, activating a second Gungnir and announcing to the world that she is Fine, surprising everyone with a double whammy of confusion. While Tsubasa and Maria are fighting, two other gear users join the fight, but luckily Chris and Hibiki arrive at the same time to take care of them, making it a huge 3 vs 3. Maria and the other two escape, realizing that they don't stand a chance, and Season 2 starts off with a bang. 3 more gear users, a lot more action, and a bigger budget to make the anime look better than ever. Well, better than Season 1 at least. And much like the first season, the first 9 episodes is mostly an introduction to the new characters, while fighting off the main cast various times, and with Hibiki losing an arm along the way. All building up to a bigger finale and more action to outdo the first season. But how does it beat the absurdity of the first season, you might ask? Well, it involves a massive spaceship, and the moon again, but I'll get to that. Let's introduce the new Symphogear users first, shall we? Maria is the main antagonist, at least at first she is. We get to learn that she is backed by 2 scientists from the United States Relic Research Facility, where an accident occurred in the past. Originally awakened by Maria's sister Serena, a creature relic hybrid called the Nephilim ended up going berserk, destroying the research facility where Maria, his sister, and a lot of orphans that were to be Symphogear candidates were being held. That incident resulted in costing Serena's life in an attempt to subdue the creature, and this resulting in Maria taking up the dream of her sister to help create a peaceful world without strife. However, her dream ends up getting warped by the caretaker and relic researcher Nastasia, as she forces Maria to commit several atrocities throughout the season, all in the name of peace. Further spurred on by Dr. Ver, who, surprise surprise, stole the Staff of Solomon as fake his own disappearance, being the main driving force behind most of the crimes they commit. Her gear, just like Hibiki's, is Gungnir, also dubbed the Black Gungnir because of its looks. As to how this is possible, it seems to be another gear made from another fragment of the original Gungnir spear, made by Ryoko herself in secret around the same time as the Gungnir for Canada was created. However, it was given to Nastasia at the American research facility instead. What Fine was planning with the second Gungnir never get explained really, it just exists. And as this is not a fragment like Hibiki's version is, Maria is able to summon a spear to fight with. Oh, and a spiffy black cape. Capes make everyone cooler. Maria harbors a lot of doubts by the suffering she ends up creating in the name of the greater good, and she's actually a very kind person, showcased by the remorse she has for innocents dying. Nastasia forced her to do these things by lying to her that she was Fine's reincarnation, as it is just a role for Maria to play a figurehead. Which, you know, kinda makes sense. In the first episode it gets mentioned that the second season takes place 3 months after Fine's demise in season 1, and Fine said she would place her trust in Hibiki, so there wouldn't be much of a point for her to return anymore. At least, not that shortly after her previous incarnation, or is there? These two are hard to talk about separately, because they're pretty much a package deal. They rarely, if ever, quite separated from one another throughout the series, and they possess the most combination attacks of any other gear user, and they are generally always seen together for everything. Shirabe is the quiet and reserved one of the two, often stubborn and cynical. Contrasted by Kirika, who is the exact opposite, childish and full of energy. She also has the habit of ending her sentences with death instead of desu. The two of them care a lot for each other, often outright proclaiming they love the other, making it the second pair of roommates this anime has. They both look up to Maria and will do anything to follow and protect her, as Maria protected them a lot in the past. However, when it comes to fighting capabilities, they probably are the weakest gear users, as they have to rely on the phonic gain-enhancing Drunken Linker to achieve better compatibility with their relics, as they are hopelessly outclassed by others in this aspect. Later on it does turn out that Shirabe was a potential Vestal for Fine, but she instead gives her soul to heal a mortally wounded Shirabe, giving up on the chance for reincarnation forevermore, never returning in the series again, at least not physically. Their relics are Shul Shagana, manifesting as a pair of saw plates, and Igalma, that manifests as a sight. And while they respect Natasha as some sort of foster mother, they absolutely do not care for Dr. Ver, who often demeans them and calls them weak. Even considering just sacrificing them and their gear as food for his little Nephilim pet project. They are both willing to fight and protect one another, even though their vision on how to protect the other might clash at times, even resulting in a fight between them in the season's finale. Both of them and Maria end up teaming up with the other gear users in a climax to save the world from disaster and to prevent Dr. Ver's plan. Right, speaking about that scumbag, let's get to his plan and how the plot of Season 2 plays out then. Dr. Ver is an asshole, and that is an understatement. We get to learn that the governments around the world have been studying the moon after the events of Season 1, and they are hiding the fact that the moon's trajectory is now altered and will slowly spiral down and crash into the Earth in a few years' time. Why does this get covered up? Well, a certain guy named Adam Weishaupt and the Bavarian Illuminati along with the US Security Council forced this information to remain hidden. But why exactly? Surely they would die too. However, it never gets explained what the motive is here. Do remember that name though, he will be important in Season 4. Somehow Dr. Ver and Natasha, who are working for the US Relic Research Institution, catch wind of this, and they decide to save the world by any means necessary. And I do mean any means. The guy revels in killing innocent people and causing widespread chaos to achieve his goal, and when he has the chance to kill 3 kids that happen to find their hideout, he has no qualms about killing them. However, when confronted in a fair fight, 9 out of 10 times he will just end up summoning noise and running away scared like a little bitch. So how does he plan on stopping the moon from crashing into the Earth? He and Natasha happen to know the location of an ancient spaceship left behind by the custodians, called the Frontier, which possesses the ability to reactivate the function of the runes on the moon that conveniently realigns the moon to its normal orbit. Does this mean that the entire moon is a superstructure artificially created by the custodians? That never gets addressed. The runes just have a function to do that. Don't worry about it. In order to activate the ship, Dr. Van needs the following things. He needs to power up the Nephilim, a creature that is artificially created by the custodians, by feeding it relics so that it becomes more powerful. Why did he create this creature? No idea, it just exists. But he does this so he can connect the heart to the power generator inside the Frontier to activate it. However, there is a different issue. The Frontier itself is sealed away so that it can't be entered, so they need to somehow break the seal on it. Luckily, the US Research Institution had a relic called a Symphogear, in essence an ancient bronze mirror with the power to reflect light that breaks curses and cleanses evil. As he believes this is the power that will be the key to get rid of the seals protecting and hiding the Frontier. In the flashback it also gets shown that the dig site where this mirror got found is the same place where Kennedy lost her parents at, while Fina ran over the relic. Alright, so the first 8 or so episodes have the bad guys fight the Symphogear users while slowly powering up the Nephilim, which goes fine, until it bites off Hibiki's arm. The shock sends Hibiki once again into a berserker mode, and she thoroughly trashes the Nephilim, ripping its heart out. This event sheds light on the matter that Hibiki's gear is slowly being fusing with her every time she uses it, and turning berserk accelerates the process rapidly. Any further use might end up endangering her life, so she gets benched for the time being, as any more fighting would be fatal to her. Add in Miku, who starts dreading losing her precious girl, a roommate forever, and she tries to make the best of her time she has left by going on dates with her. Just trips and outings with her totally platonic friend. until they get interrupted by a noise attack where Miku and Hibiki get separated in the chaos, and as the tower explodes, making Hibiki and us think that Miku died in the explosion. However, it turns out that Maria ended up coming across Miku, and she saved her right before the explosion took place, taking her to the hidden headquarters of her group, before they set out to attempt a second activation of the frontier. However, Hibiki gets no time to grieve, as the special disaster team tracks down the location where they are heading. And when trying to save US patrol ships caught in a noise attack from Dr. Ver, Miku appears in front of the group, clad in a Symphogear, shocking everyone. Being taken advantage of, Dr. Ver gave Miku a Symphogear created from the Symphogear, so she could protect Hibiki instead of the other way around. However, it was all a ploy by Dr. Ver, as the gear was outfitted with a mind control device, allowing him to brainwash her. Their original attempt to activate the frontier failed, because the relic lacked in power, and, he figured, a Symphogear user pumped full of Linker would generate more than enough fun and game to break through the seal protecting it. Hibiki, despite being in danger of dying when transforming, says she has to stop Miku herself and confronts her, realizing she has been brainwashed. During the fight, she comes to the realization that she might be able to save Miku with the help of her own cleansing laser fire. So when all the energy gathered for a big blast shoots at the frontier to break the seal, she tackles Miku into the light and both of them get hit by the cleansing laser, and it turns out that Hibiki's gamble was a success. Miku gets cleansed of the gear that has taken hold of her, and as a side effect, Hibiki gets saved from the relic corrupting her body, making her gamble a great success. Furthermore, they get cleansed of something else, but we will come back to that when Season 4 calls for it. However, Ver's plan succeeds nonetheless, and a massive spaceship under the sea gets revealed. And with the use of the Nephilim's heart, and injecting himself with DNA of the creature in his right arm, making him able to control any relic upon touch, he activates it, slowly making it descend to the moon. Both teams of Symphogear users board the frontier in preparation for the final showdown, but with Shirabe and Chris having switched teams. Chris playing a double agent to get the Staff of Solomon out of Dr. Ver's hands, and Shirabe had a fallout with Kirika earlier, which resulted in her being captured. Tsubasa ends up playing along with Chris and they retake the staff, and Shirabe and Kirika make up again after having a fight between the two of them. And honestly, their fight is kinda silly since it originates from a misunderstanding between the two of them, as they both just want to protect the other, but they don't know how to express their feelings. Don't worry about it, we can use those action scenes to pad out the runtime. While all of this goes down on the outside of the spaceship, inside the control room, Maria is trying to activate the beacon that reactivates the realignment failsafe on the moon, but she fails. Natasha tries to convince Maria to try again, but Ver comes along, rushing in and punching Maria to the side, complaining, and I quote, that he can do whatever he wants if the moon fails to hit the Earth, revealing that he just wanted to rule the Earth all along, but as there are too many humans on the planet, it needs some number reduction. Yep, he went full power hungry. And to stop Natasha from interfering, he launches the area she is researching in how to save Earth into space, killing her. Maria snaps and goes in for the killing blow, on the pathetically whiny Ver I might add, but Hibiki stops her and steals the Symphogear Maria is currently using and wearing. Yeah, she just can do that somehow now. Okay then. Also, might I add that somehow all of this is being broadcasted down to Earth, so everyone can see what's going on in the command room, and their naked butts during the transformations. Dr. Ver does what he does best, and he runs away, summoning the Nephilim again on the outside of the ship, now boosted by feeding on all of the spaceship's power. Hibiki leaves with the gear that she stole from Maria, and along with the 4 other gear users she tries to stop it. Still inside the command room, Maria tries singing once again to activate the beacon in a last ditch effort, but this time she sings a song that the sister always sang, which somehow ends up connecting the wishes and the prayers from all of humanity down on the planet, converting all of this into energy into powering the beacon, activating the moon's realignment device thingamajig. Don't worry about it, it just works, okay? Outside, the other girls are still struggling fighting off the superpowered Nephilim, until Maria shows up to help them. And by using her sister's old damaged gear Architrum, which Maria has been holding onto all this time, they manage to push back the creature and defeat it. That is, until Dr. Verges says fuck it, and he overloads the ship's core to make it self-destruct, causing the entire ship to start falling apart. He gets captured, and the Special Disaster Team, which submarine headquarters conveniently got stuck on top of the spaceship, ends up falling back to the Earth, saving their lives. The Nephilim's heart, still stuck to the spaceship's core, ends up absorbing all the energy created by the self-destruct feature, and ends up turning into an even greater monstrosity. In all this chaos, the Symphogear users ended up in space. This is now the second time they just fly around in space and are magically fine. How do they even breathe? Why don't they freeze? Magic, I guess. Don't worry about it. Now stuck in space with a massive creature that is about to explode and potentially cause a total disaster on Earth, Chris does some quick thinking and decides to overcharge the Staff of Solomon, forcing it to open a portal to the pocket dimension it pulls noise from and sending the Nephilim into there to contain it. However, the creature drags Maria in there as well, and now they need to go after her to get her out in time. They fight off the noise, the Nephilim itself, and finally manage to free Maria, and they manage to leave the dimension and return to Earth just barely before the creature explodes. And they nearly throw themselves into the closing portal, getting it caught in the massive explosion, destroying it and countless of noise in the process. And that is how Season 2 ends, with a bang, quite literally. That was an eventful finale, and I tried trimming it down as much as possible, while trying to not skip important events and still trying to have it make some sense. Dr. Ver's motivations kinda remind me of Finney in some degree. Both started out wanting to save humanity, one from a curse, the other one from likely extinction. But just the ways they went along things are questionable, and in the end Ver just wanted to be humanity's ruler. Season 2 is an improvement over Season 1 in some ways. There was more action, but there was also less downtime. The action looks good thanks to the increased budget the studio got, but I do miss the downtime Season 1 had, as it spent more time fleshing out the characters and gave them more development. Both seasons kinda make up the first half of the series in my eyes, as the other 3 seasons have different elements and enemies in them that don't show up in these 2 at all, kinda dividing it into 2 halves. Speaking of the characters, now there are 6 gear users, and the cast basically doubled in size, which in later seasons makes it harder to balance development for each individual one of them. Sure, Hibiki, Chris and Tsubasa got plenty of that in the first season, and they got a little bit of it now. But the 3 newcomers end up not getting too much, and even repeat some of the development in the upcoming seasons, and what they get is stuck between countless fights. Chris finally gets to destroy the Staff of Solomon she first activated last season, which she ended up regretting because of how many innocents have died from it, so she gets a little bit of closure from that. Miku also gets a decent amount in this season, but other than showing up a few times, she's pretty much non-existent until the last season rolls around, which is kinda sad seeing stuff that happened here. That also brings me to the point what Symphogear does worst. It spends next to no time going over the aftermath of these near-world destroying events. At most you get a footnote at the start of the next season. But overall, Season 2 is a great follow-up to what came before. People enjoyed it, and we all kinda thought that would be it, and that it would be the last we'd see of the series. And for 2 years the series lay dormant, but then we got an announcement that a new project for a 3rd season was in the works, and it would be airing in the summer of 2015. The 3rd season would be airing 2 years later, but apparently in the universe it was only 3 to 4 months, and it throws us straight into the action. Hibiki, Chris and Tsubasa, or all I henceforth dubbed the A-Team at times, have to help a space shuttle that is crashing to land safely. Yes, the gear users are now just reduced to glorified problem solvers. And we get to learn that after the Frontier incident, the Special Disaster Prevention Team got restructured as its own division of the United Nations, called SOM. Not the most original acronym, but it gets the point across. The reason they have to save that space shuttle in particular is because it was a recovery team that went after the section of the Frontier that got launched by Dr. Ver, and it contains Nastasha's dead body and the knowledge of relics. And how do they save the shuttle? By punching a mountain and flying under the now separated peak of it, before sliding into a town and Hibiki flipping it over a house to protect the inhabitants. 10 minutes in and we're already back to the absurd bullshittery Symphogear is known and loved for. And then it is time for Tsubasa to hold one of her trademark episode 1 concerts. And it goes wrong again, because of course it does. However, this time the audience gets completely spared of the misery, at least that is an improvement. Both Tsubasa and Maria get ambushed underground on the way back of the venue, by an unknown enemy who isn't a human, but a machine. And after chasing the two across London, she surprises them, and everyone on the team watching, by summoning Noise. Command and the two are confused because their Noise were dealt with, and the staff was destroyed along with the Noise inside the pocket dimension containing them. So, where are these Noise coming from? And not knowing any better, Tsubasa transforms to fight the Noise, but she's shocked to learn that these specific Noise are altered, and they render the Symphogear protection against Noise null. As her gear disintegrates in front of her eyes, Maria unable to help her, the enemy leaves without a word. At the same time in Tokyo, Chris and Hibiki are dispatched to investigate a sudden outbreak of parts of the city being engulfed in fire. Chris comes across a suspected arsonist, which turns out being another one of those machines that attacked Tsubasa, who was chasing down a girl named Elf9. And, just like Tsubasa, she engages the Noise this enemy summoned, and she also loses her gear in the fight before the enemy backs off. All the while, Hibiki in another part of town comes across a girl who proclaims she is an alchemist and that she will destroy the world. Of course, Hibiki, the person she is, doesn't want to fight and want to talk things out, but she gets attacked and knocked out. And that is how Season 3 starts, straight to the point and the enemy and their plans made clear. Yes, the bad guy is an alchemist, and from this point onwards, every antagonist in the seasons to come are alchemists. It getting revealed that alchemy was created as an attempt to reunite humans after the loss of the unified language, just like music, both being a different side of the same coin. And get this, both of these were conceptualized by none other than Fine. So while Fine might be long gone at this point, we're still kinda dealing with the stuff that she created millennia ago. Now it might sound kinda like bullshit that Fine is also responsible for this entire new branch of science. However, it does kinda make sense, seeing how she was the only person to effectively weaponize music and create the Symphogears. I do kinda have to admit it is funny how every source of misery in this franchise somehow traces back to her. The girl that Chris saved, Elf9, turns out to be a clone of the big bad guy of the season named Carol. Carol has been alive for a few hundred years, transferring her consciousness and memories down to clones of herself. And Elf9 was activated and paired with knowledge and memories in order to assist Carol with the creation of her ultimate weapon that can break down the earth. However, upon finding what Carol was planning to do and disagreeing with it, Elf9 ran away, stealing a fragment of the relic Dainslev in hopes to hand it over to Song so they could stop her. Incorporating Dainslev into the Symphogears would give them a resistance against their chemically created Noise dubbed Alkanoids. Yes, creative name, I know. Which have the powers to specifically destroy Symphogears, and would provide the users with a boost in power that can be activated at will. However, the power comes at a cost, as it draws on the power of the berserk aspect that Hibiki has stepped into twice by accident. By tapping into that power, it will exert levels of fun again so high that it is harmful to the user, but in return give them the edge they need to fight the 4 machines Carol created, the Autoscorers. And so the first half of the season as the remaining gear users fight with these enemies a few times, who target the gear users in order to destroy and disable them so they cannot send up the Carol. All the while Hibiki struggles with daddy issues, as her father has returned after years of being divorced from her mother and wanting to get back together with her. Hibiki at first doesn't want anything to do with him, because he was a coward who ran away when the family was going through tough times. I didn't mention it before, but in Season 2 it got alluded to that Hibiki and her family went through bullying and shaming because she was the only survivor of the Swiming concert, as they got a monetary compensation from the government for all the trauma it induced, making the people see them as leeches and profiting off others' lives. And her father divorced and left in the middle of all this, since he didn't want to deal with it. His return has quite the impact on Hibiki's state of mind, while she's already struggling with the responsibilities of the power she has, making her unable to use her gear for a while, before she loses it completely to an enemy autoscorer, which knocks her into a coma for a good week, leaving the members of the B team, Maria, Shirobe and Kirika, to pick up the pieces. All the 3 members of the B team suffer in the fact that they lost the person that guided them in life, Natasha, resulting in a lack of direction in where to go and what to do with their lives from here. While at the same time Shirobe and Kirika suffer under the knowledge that they are the weakest fighters of the team, holding the others back. Exaggerated by the fact that they need Dr. Ver's linker to remain compatible with their gears, which they are running out of. And Chris feels the need to put up a tough act in front of the 2 younger members, as she feels the need to protect them, because she knows the world is a bad place if you're alone to deal with everything. Meanwhile, Tsubasa also has some daddy issues of her own, as we get introduced to her father, and Commander Genjuro's brother, Kazunari Yatsuhiro. Tsubasa and him never really got along all that well, as he mostly kept her involved with the family business and never spent much time with her. It quickly gets brought to light that he isn't actually her father, and he only took care of her, as her grandfather, Kazunari Fudo, is actually her father. Yes, I'll let you think about that one for a while. It isn't pretty what happened to her mother, that's for sure. And the reason Yatsuhiro left her alone all these years was so that she wouldn't feel tied down to family business, and she could fulfill her own dreams of being an idol instead, against her father's wishes, who wants her to be the head of the family. Amidst all of these personal problems going on, Hibiki finally getting out of coma, everyone's gear being upgraded, they defeat Carol. Yes, after only 6 episodes the big bad dies, so you know something is wrong, which brings me to Carol herself and her motivations. Carol wants to destroy the world, more specifically, break it down to its most basic compound. Why? Because of her misguided interpretation of her dying father's last words. He told her to get to know the world more, how things and people work, and she took it on face value, wanting to literally know what the planet is made of. He wanted her to interact with humans and forgive them for their misguided principles and faith that ended up making him the victim of a witch hunt. Not to turn the Earth into the base components and committing genocide against humanity in the process. Be careful what you tell your little kid when you are burning on a stake. She might just misinterpret it and commit global extermination instead. To achieve this, she created the Flying Base of Operations, Chateau de Defarge, which... oh. And she created the 4 outer scores, each imbued with an alchemical element and outfitted with a music recording function. Why are they equipped with this? Well, in order to operate a weapon, she requires several things, and one of them is a song of multiple Symphogear users using the Dynaslave Ignite module, converting it into massive phonic gain to power a weapon. Instead of Elf9 running away with the relic in hopes for the gear users to be able to stop Carol, it was all according to Carol's plan, as she needed gear users to get their hands on this cursed melody that she calls it. Said energy blast of the weapon needs to be directed at an intersection of several ley lines, for which need is still a ley line map to locate. And said map is conveniently enough recovered from the frontier by the crashing space shuttle from the first episode. It is honestly silly how that worked out. What if they didn't stop the crashing shuttle? What if they never went to space to find it? What would Carol have done then? Just give up? Let's just ignore the coincidence of all this for the sake of it, as the plan is full of holes if you think about it too hard. Don't worry about it. During the whole season, the outer scores just kinda arrest the gear users in their daily life, and then run away at the slightest inconvenience, to extreme and silly degrees. The water element outer score Gary shows up in the middle of the day to bother Hibiki and her fellow classmates before leaving. And in episode 7 she cuts short a beach fan service episode before running away when the plan fails, only for her to return 5 minutes later to harass Maria and try again. It is downright silly how often they show up and end up running away if you ask me. Eventually, all 4 of them die fulfilling their mission and provide 4 recordings of the cursed Dynaslave melody for Carol's plan. Carol, who is at this point revived and transferred her memories to the last clones yet lying around, and sets out to finalize her plan. The last thing she needs is the Indian relic Yantra Sarvasva, that possesses the power to activate and control any relic in the world, so she can actually activate her Doomsday machine. Why didn't she just give it an on-or-off switch? I don't know. Which turns out is kept in an undersea base named the Dragon's Palace, off the coast of Japan, which gets blown up at the end of this operation. But as soon as she gets her hands on it, Chris shoots it and destroys it, so there goes that plan. That is, until Dr. Vash shows up, as he was kept there as a prisoner since the Season 2 incident, and Carol learns that his Nephilim-infused left arm can conveniently do the same thing as the relic she wanted, so she takes him with her instead. Before promptly killing him off when he realized he activated the World Destruction Machine, which he doesn't agree with. Also, everyone's reaction on Verse showing up again is hilarious. Chris is annoyed, Shirabe and Kirika are full of disgust. And even Carol herself finds the guy highly annoying because he doesn't shut up and keeps spouting random nonsense. With all these species she can finally activate her weapon, and she starts a process to destroy the world, and she faces the gear users donning a Faust robe, the alchemical equivalent to a Symphogear. which instead burns the user's memories and converts them into tremendous fun again and destructive power. And in doing so, dropping in my eyes the best checker song yet in the franchise, and starts kicking the gear users' asses in a one-sided face-off. Hibiki, Tsubasa and Chris try to hold her occupied in combat, while the other three infiltrate the weapon in order to stop it. Where they find a wounded Dr. Ver, who they need to defend from the noise while he tries to reverse the ongoing planet disintegration. Carol, in a desperate attempt to stop them, decides to blow the weapon up so that the process cannot be halted or reverted, killing everyone inside. But she is too late as Ver succeeds and undoes the planet-wide disintegration just before he dies, and the other three gear users inside barely survive. Her plan having failed, Carol decides she'll just kill everyone herself, summoning a mass army of alkanoids and burning all of her remaining memories to gain even greater power. The gear users respond by using their Ignite module to the maximum potential and singing their superb song at the same time, and with Hibiki as a regulator of sorts, they defy the part of the immense fun again Carol generates among the gear users in order to supercharge themselves. It is at this point that the fight turns into a giant noise cleanup mission, where the gear users create increasingly silly combinations to fight with. For example, Shirabe and Kiraka turn into a giant saw-blade UFO with sights, cutting down swaths of noise. It is exactly as ridiculous as it sounds, but hey, it works. Carol, however, is not outdone in silliness, as she creates a giant fire-weaving lion Megazord to face the gear users with, because, well, why not, I suppose. The gear users combine their power and create a giant fist, which Hibiki uses to punch and destroy Carol's creation with, and the day is saved. No final raising the stakes moment here, as that was just a fight against Carol herself. Instead, the third season almost goes out on the most depressing note yet. In the earlier scuffle at the undersea facility, Elfline got mortally wounded and is on her last breath. Everyone is distraught at the fact they cannot save her, and the mood is glum, as no one has the capabilities of restoring a chemically created homunculus. Until at the last moment, where a wounded and amnesiac Carol wanders in, giving her body to Elfline's spirit so she can move on and live in her stead. Surely these two fusing together won't have any repercussions in the future? Nah, that would be silly. Don't worry about it. We get to see that Hibiki has finally forgiven her father and has given him another chance, as she tries to reunite him with her mother. And while seeing off Tsubasa for a concert in London, the Kazanari brothers discuss the whole deal that just happened and call it the Magical Girl Incident. I find it hilarious that in the universe, this whole neo-apocalyptic event that would result in humanity dying and the planet being destroyed is being called the Magical Girl Incident. He also kinda offhandedly mentioned that thanks to the whole moon cover-up situation from the last season, that the US is currently destabilized and a hot mess. And that trouble is brewing in Europe, which actually never gets addressed in later seasons now I think about it. And the final scene of the season shows Elf9 joining as a researcher for the disaster team, and helping them analyze the data chip that Dr. Ver gave to Maria before he passed away, making this the first time the season ends on a teaser for what's to come. And that's about it for Season 3. This season ends up introducing a lot of elements that will be recurring in the next two seasons, along with setting up some new chapters and plotlines that will be playing a bigger role later. It is a pretty good season, the action is solid, and it is the only season where the moon isn't somehow involved with the bad guy's plan. Carol's plan might just be a little bit silly, seeing as one big misunderstanding of her father's final wish. And other than Gary, the outer scores don't really do much for me to stand out. It doesn't help how many times they show up to fight, only for them to leave, either not finishing off the gear users or just leaving slightly annoyed. I guess it is all part of their plan so that the gear users follow the script of using the Ignite modules, but it is still silly if they just leave and they don't follow that plan or just fail at it. The best scenes of the season are easily the ones where Carol fights and single-handedly kicks the gear user's ass as well as song plays. It is just such a good song, and it brings a lot of weight to the action with how imposing it sounds. Oh, and her adult form when she wields the Faust rope is great too. The Alkanoids are a bit of a letdown though, since after the upgrade they aren't much of a challenge. And in the previous season there were at least more noise designs, as from now on it's only going to be the same 4 enemies that you're going to see. Every chapter gets a little bit of development, though things are not as extensive as in the previous seasons, and Mika doesn't show up much other than a few scenes. The animation is a little bit more polished in Season 2, but from here on out not much would change. The gears themselves also got a small visual overhaul, but it will also remain consistent from now on. I personally quite like the gears design for the Ignite module when it gets used, as all the white on the gear gets replaced with black, and they get a little bit sleeker in their design. It is also funny how Chris's gear started out as black and red in the first season, which changed to white and red to fit in with the group, and again turns black and red when the Ignite model is used. It's called Full Circle. It is probably in this point of time that the Symphogear madness was on its highest, as the series has reached the peak of its popularity. There were already various concerts being held with all the Jack Johansson songs and stuff, and it would be announced that a gacha game would be developed. And it didn't take long for the confirmation that there would not only be a 4th season, but also a 5th season, resulting in both of these being worked on at the same time. And that is most likely the reason why season 4 turned out the way it did. In 2017 season 4 got released, Symphogear Access. These names are progressively getting sillier. And it starts off by sending the gear users to a war zone in Brazil. No, the fictional country of Valverde, where they end up fighting in a civil war against a corrupt regime and are pushing tanks. Yeah, that is quite a departure from fighting Noise and Alchemist, isn't it? However, the regime makes use of relics, supplied to them by the Bavarian Illuminati, who got mentioned back in season 2. And while this season doesn't start off with a concert, innocent civilians are still in danger, resulting in Chris needing to shoot off the leg of a kid that got touched by the noise and starts disintegrating. And not a nitpick, but usually when humans get touched by the noise, they immediately dissolve. Why this kid doesn't, I don't know, but I'll let it slide for now. The alchemist ends up summoning a giant regenerating divine serpent to fight the gear users with, and it turns out that Hibiki is the only one who can damage this creature for some reason. Both camps retreat, and that is how the 4th season starts, guns blazing. The action doesn't let up until the end of the season, as there is a little downtime during events. The little downtime we do get in between the action is some chapter development for Chris, who has to deal with the result of shooting the kid's leg off to save his life. And the woes of Shirobe and Kirika, because they still lack the link they need. It turns out that Alpha has been slacking in between the seasons and has not yet fully analyzed Dr. Verse's notes, so they cannot start creating the drug yet. And with the help of Maria, whose subconsciousness she dives into, in order to find the missing link, she finally finds out what the drug is missing. Which turns out to be love, or rather, the part of the brain that is responsible for creating the feelings of love. Look, don't sweat the details. It is solved by adding some drugs that stimulate that part of the brain apparently. So, science, yay. Chris, as I mentioned, gets to deal with the fact that she took away the future of a kid that loves football by shooting off his leg. But if you ask me, this entire ordeal is kinda silly. Look, sure, the kid loves football, I get that, but it was his leg or his life. The caretaker of the kid gives her a rough time over this, saying that she didn't think about her actions. What did you want her to do here then? Let him die? Oh no, he can't football anymore, might as well just put him down. Well, she happens to be an old familiar of Chris, back when her parents were still alive. And Chris blamed her for not checking the cargo in the transport that ended up being a bomb killing her parents. So for a bunch of the episodes in this season, these two are just kinda bitchy towards one another. But they all make up after the kid says that he isn't upset at Chris for blasting his leg off, right after she has to save him again from another random noise attack. It is honestly a silly affair that takes half the season to get resolved, and I still feel Chris did nothing wrong. It makes sense she felt bad about it, but the amount of blame she gets towards her from the caregiver is just dumb. Shirobe also gets a bit of a spotlight, as she's not really wanting to get along with anyone else, because she's afraid people might get hurt because of her. But it gets resolved half an episode later, thanks to Tsubasa helping her out. Yes, half an episode for some character development, which ends up feeling a bit short and rushed, which is where some of my issues with this season come in. There is a near constant barrage of action, which is fine, but I feel that compared to season 1, it is at the cost of character development, which is getting cut short and resolved faster. But I imagine it is a result of the cast being twice as big, as it makes it harder to balance things out. And when it comes to the action, while there is more of it, it also feels it's a lot more sillier. The alchemists show up at every turn to inconvenience the gear users, and then leave, multiple times. The outer scorers in season 3 did the same, but it's been dialed up a notch in silliness. They also come with their own form of power creep. They fight using Faust ropes much like Carol did, though nowhere near as cool looking as her. And one of them even turns into a silly vehicle at some point. However, in instead of them being powered by burning memories, they are powered by the Philosopher's Stone, which conveniently possesses the power to purify the gear users from their Ignite power-up, rendering it useless. But F9 quickly finds a way to counteract this, with the use of the crystallized remains of Hibiki's corruption from Season 2. The argument being that the Philosopher's Stones are made by the souls of many, and Hibiki's full stone is the crystallization of a single soul, resulting in neutralizing the effect. Yeah, don't worry about it. It just works. Science, yay. However, the problem therein lies that the Full Stone was kept in the Undersea Dragon Palace, which got blown up last season, so they have to get back there and dredge the stone up. And while doing that, the alchemists just show up and attack them, not even knowing what the gear users are doing there in the first place, just to annoy them. They don't even know of the countermeasures that they came up with. The alchemists have the upper hand. They don't even need to engage them, they can just do their own things at this point. But nah, gotta annoy those pesky gear users. I have mentioned them, but the three alchemists they encounter are Saint-Germain, Prologue, and Cagliostro. And as far as enemies go, these are some of the more forgettable ones, sadly. They don't really have much of a motivation, only Saint-Germain really has a goal. The other two just follow her around out of respect and want to see her plan succeed. Her plan is relatively simple, however, breaking the curse of Belial by taking control of the lunar runes and freeing humanity, restoring their unified language. So basically, much like Fine, she wants to undo the curse on humanity. And just like Fine, the way of her wanting to achieve this is questionable. Under the instructions of the Illuminati leader, Adam Weishaupt, who we get to in a bit, she sets out on collecting energy to convert into divine power, and they gain this power from transmuting human life, effectively killing innocents. And how much humans does she need to kill? Just a bit over 70,000, give or take. They probably calculated the specifics, don't worry about it. They also need to find a specific location on Earth where this power can be obtained, which is why they need an outer scorer they find in Valverde. 400 years or so ago, they lost this outer scorer on sea, when they encountered Fine as a pirate. Even though Fine is long gone at this point in the story, yep, her again, she's still somehow relevant for things happening in one way or another. The outer scorer sank to the bottom of the sea and somehow found its way to South America. Now retrieved and powered up by the relic the Amphitera, which I now just realizes where she got her name Tiki from, very clever writers, she can find the exact location on Earth they need, thanks to astrology. How does the astrology come into this, you might ask? Well, there is something about multiple shrines in Japan laid out in the exact way the Orion constellation up in the sky is, right on top of multiple ley lines. The ley lines that had their protection weakened thanks to Carol's shenanigans last season, conveniently. Which also brings me to the fact that they apparently aided Carol in the construction of a planet-destroying weapon by supplying her materials. And here I ask, why? If Carol's plan would have succeeded, she would have disintegrated the entire world, including the people on it. This plan would have killed the entire Illuminati as well. Yet they helped her in this plan. Did she not tell them the purpose of this weapon? Did they have a backup plan to live? Were they just fine with these things? Were they just fine with everything dying? None of this ever gets addressed. I guess Adam just didn't care. So, don't worry about it. Speaking of him, Adam Weishaupt is the leader of the Bavarian Illuminati. And of course, his plan is more than just ridding humanity of the curse. He actually wants the divine power for himself. Breaking humanity's curse is none of his concern, he's just using the three alchemists for his own ends. He wants to get back at the custodians, as he was actually created by them as their first prototype for humanity. But as they deemed him too perfect, whatever that means, they disposed of him instead. But he survived and wants revenge, for their return is nigh apparently, and he is the most powerful enemy the gear users have ever faced. Easily wiping out an entire secret base of the Japanese government in a single moment. He ends up betraying the three alchemists, though at the point he does this, it's only Saint-Germain, as the other two fake their death and went into hiding, giving all the divine power to Tiki, who transforms into a creature with godlike powers. Now, do you remember the city from the Season 3 finale that Carol blew up? Well, Tiki does it again, and afterwards she quickly gets defeated by Hibiki, who is the only one who can hurt her. Why can Hibiki hurt her? Well, it gets explained that somehow Gungnir ended up inheriting the power to kill gods. Back 2000 years ago, the Lens of Longinus dealt a final blow to Christ. Somehow this turned into the concept of the god-killing lance, and somehow, despite it being a completely different spear, Gungnir inherited this trait. Don't ask any questions, I don't know how, it just did. Conceptual weapons aren't a new thing to this series, as one of the outer scores in Season 3 had a sword that breaks all things considered a blade. And since Tsubasa considers herself a blade to protect the weak, she was at risk too. It makes sense in that way. Still, how does a spear Gungnir that was from a completely different part in the world gain this ability? Unless it somehow applies to any relic that happens to be a spear in this universe. Again, don't sweat the details, don't worry about it. And after Hibiki destroys Tiki, Adam nopes out. And somehow, Hibiki ends up inheriting the divine power, surprising everyone, turning into a cocoon, slowly turning into a divine being on the inside. Now what? Time for politics, that's what. In her rampage, Tiki managed to shoot down several satellites in space, including a United States one. And because of the stuff happening in Japan, the United Nations is now getting involved with the conflict that is happening. Hibiki or not, the giant cocoon with divine power is a disaster waiting to happen, and they are having a meeting on how to deal with this. Enter Kazunari Fudo, who was alluded to in Season 3. Tsubasa's father and a political trouble fixer of a high rank in the Japanese government. And prior to the United Nations stepping in, the original funder of the disaster prevention team. He is nationalistic to a fault, to the point of xenophobia, caring for Japan as a nation first and foremost, and a control freak, as reflected in how he treats the family affairs. After the incident where Adam blew up a research facility under his command, already greatly agitated with how Song has been failing to handle these things, he gets antsy of even the thought of the United Nations interfering with the current conflict on Japanese soil, swearing he won't let him set one foot in the country and takes matters in his own hands. So while everyone is thinking of how to handle the cocoon with Hibiki inside, he sends in tanks to start shooting at the thing without thinking about it. Which of course results in the thing transforming into a giant humanoid monster that goes on a rampage blowing up the remains of the city. Good job, idiot. Luckily the gear users show up to put a stop to this rampage, and Elf9 has thought of a way to fix things, pumping the giant full of anti-linker in an attempt to separate Hibiki from the divine power. While Miku gives her a rousing speech over a megaphone. Which works, of course it does. I told you the power of friendship trumps all in this anime. Fudo is pissed that his plans failed, but the United Nations came to the conclusion to not interfere. After all, the problem is resolved. But it is too late, as the United States President already decided to launch a nuke at Japan. While everyone is in a panic what to do, Sanjiman and the other two alchemists decide to intercept the nuke, transmuting the nuclear blast, completely neutralizing it, but giving the life in the process. And then Adam shows up again, wanting to absorb the remaining divine power that is still lingering around like it is a cloud or something into his severed arm, before Hibiki destroys the arm and the power with it, causing Adam to lose it, revealing his real form, which is a massive monster, and he fights off the gear users. While Hibiki, with the use of Sanjiman's leftover Philosopher's Stone, ends up absorbing the power of all of the Symphogear users and finishes off Adam in a flurry of punches, and the day is saved, for now. In the aftermath we get to learn that the remnants of the Illuminati are taken down, and the organization is no more. Meanwhile, during a briefing, Fudo is seething at the United States for launching a nuke, and comments that if he had his godly power on his side, Japan would be the most powerful and prosperous nation on the earth, shocking Yatsuhiro, who is in the same room as him. And Elf9 finds out the reason why Hibiki was able to obtain the godly power, as no human with the curse of Balal should be able to do so. The reason being is that when she got hit by the sensual Jing's light in Season 2, she also got glanced of the curse, making her able to accept the divine power. While Genjiro notes that there was someone else who got hit by this light as well, Miku. And on that reveal, the season comes to an end, with setups for Season 5 and a to be continued screen, making Season 4 the only season which does this. And much like that, the entire season honestly feels like it's a massive setup for Season 5, or being the first half of Season 5. Which feels like a detriment. The first 3 seasons were self-contained, while pulling from what happened before, leaving a few plot threads hanging for potential sequels, but here it is intended, and it is felt. Made apparent even more that both Seasons 4 and 5 are being developed at the same time, and Season 5 was being advertised as a final season as soon as we got that announcement. Maybe also influenced by the fact that there were 2 additional writers to help Kaneko out, because he was having a rough time back then. This is also the season that is the most action heavy, and characters don't get much downtime. I don't hate the season, and it's still a good watch, but personally, this is probably my least favorite to all of these factors. It is especially silly that when Prologue learns the truth from Adam, she runs away to inform Saint-Germain, while still fighting the gear users on her way there, instead of wanting to side with them against a larger evil. Only to disappear after the fact until the finale where the three of them self-sacrifice. I guess in this case Hibiki had the right idea for once. Just talking it out with the enemy would have helped so much more. So much issues could have been prevented if we only teamed up beforehand. Oh, and as a side note, while working on this I found out that Adam Weishaupt actually existed, and so did the Bavarian Illuminati back in the 1700s. Though not in the same way as the conspiracy theories about it are, or how it gets used in the various forms of media. I don't know what to do with this information, send help. Anyway, Adam is just a power-hungry asshole who wants to get back at his creators, the Custodians, who he claimed would be returning to Earth soon. How soon? Well, we got to find it out 2 years later when we got Season 5 of Symphogear, the final season of Symphogear. The season starts with the gear users going to Antarctica, having analyzed data from the remains of the destroyed Aurus core Tiki. Said data indicating that a specific location in Antarctica is where the Custodians will be returning. And the moment the team arrives, a giant high-tech sarcophagus surfaces from a frozen lake. Its defense systems get activated, and they have to fight it in order to disable it. Once disabled, it turns out that inside are the mummified remains of a Custodian wearing a golden brazier. Long since dead. Yes, dead. Adam was afraid of their return, only for them to be dead already. Or did he expect them to invade instead? Then why watch over this spot? Did he mess up? Well, we never got to know. He's dead. Regardless of all that, the remains get secured and get sent to America for analysis, while 2 of the gear users help out with the escort. But why they do that, a new foe appears before them trying to steal the remains from themselves. But the gear users easily fight off this new enemy, and with the remains delivered and left to be analyzed, they leave. All's well that ends well, you might think. However, when they are analyzing the remains, something goes wrong and the remains completely disintegrate, leaving nothing but dust in the bracer it was wearing. The bracer bearing the name Shamha. Which gets stolen a little bit later by another new enemy that just blows up the entire base in the process. Meanwhile, assuming everything is fine, Sebas and Maria decide to hold a concert. And that goes about as well as concerts go in this series. An enemy attacks them and kills everyone inside the venue, including murdering a little girl in cold blood right in front of Tsubas's eyes. This might just be the most edgy the series has ever been. Honestly, out of all the concerts in this franchise, all of them except one in the first season have gone wrong. Why are people still going to these? They surely must realize that their lives are at stake. The odds aren't looking good, at least. And I guess that brings me to the bad guys of this season, Noble Rat. While the Bavarian Illuminati itself might be destroyed, these 3 are the failed experiments of them, and the defeat of the Illuminati resulted in them being freed. All 3 of them are no longer human. Vanessa is a cyborg, Milak is what's best described a vampire, and Elsa is, I guess they were going for a werewolf theme with her. But she only has the wolf ears, and for anything else she relies on mechanical attachments, so she can transform and fight. I might have said that Season 4 had a disappointing team of enemies, but these might be even worse in my eyes. Why? Well, let me explain that. These 3 have been experimented on and abused by the Illuminati, resulting them in being more monster than human, and they just want to be accepted. And the way to do this is crimes and murder. Blame their new benefactor for that, I suppose, as now they need a very rare and not existing blood type which is hard to get. They need this blood for transfusions, otherwise they die. But hell, in a concert alone, Milak is responsible for a small 70,000 victims she killed without hesitation, which one, by the end of the season just kinda gets pardoned, and she never apologizes for it or says she's sorry. And 2, it is about as much as Saint-Germain needed to obtain the divine power, and she managed to collect that in a small 300 years. So either Saint-Germain was working towards a goal very inefficiently, or Malakis is a psychopath. One thing is for sure though, genocide is always on the menu in Symphogear. And the worst part is, in my eyes she's probably the most interesting of the three, as at least she's hateable for the atrocities she commits. Other than a tortured and dark backstory, the three don't really have much going for them. At least Dr. Fair was so over the top that he was hilarious. It is also quite impressive that they can keep up with the gear users after seasons and seasons of upgrades. The power creep is real. And the only reason they don't immediately get their ass kicked by the gear users using their newly unlocked amalgam form, a power that is derived from an amalgamation of combining the Philosopher's Stone left behind by Saint-Germain with the Symphogear replacing the Ignite module, is because they get held back by paperwork. I kid you not. Some of the overseers of the Song Division see this power, and they claim it is illegal to use it as it has not been approved of. It is silly, very silly, and it is nothing more than a handicap issued on them by the bad guy of this season, who is our best friend Kazunari Fudo. As the three members of Noble Red work under him, that is, at least initially. After the events of the last season, he has completely lost it. He wants and will make Japan into the glorious nation that it should be in his mind. And in order to do that, he wants the power of a god, as one does in these kind of situations. He is the one who finds and employs Noble Red, causing them to commit these multiple atrocities, and in return supplies them with the rare blood they need to live. He sends Elsa to steal the bracer, who fails. He later sends Vanessa to try again, who succeeds. And he sends Malark to murder innocents attending his daughter's concert so he can place a spell on her. Good going there, my man. You are in the running for the worst anime father, and your competition includes Sho Tucker from Fullmetal Alchemist and Bonnroo from Made in Abyss. He wants to use the bracer of Shema to get the divine power out of it, and for that he has them kidnap Miku and Elf 9, who get caught when running away from a noise attack. He wants Elf 9 for her chemical and engineering skills. So the two of them get taken inside of the ruins of Chateau de Tifage, that is still in the middle of the city for some reason. I guess they never got to clean up this mess. And Miku? Well, she will be used to bestow the divine power upon, since Fudo learned that she is cleansed of the curse of Belial just like Hibiki is, and thus should be able to wield that power. And so Elf 9 gets forced to work on a power generator, which draws out the power of the divine bracer, which succeeds and summons a weird baby-like creature above the chateau. Which in turn gives away the hiding location of Noble Red since it was still unknown, and the gear users immediately get dispatched trying to fight it off. Without much luck as the divine creature proves to be too strong. In the chaos, Elf 9 flees and is miraculously saved from Noble Red by the auto scores from Season 3. Now, don't ask me how this is possible, as they were very much destroyed back in that season. But they are back and are here to defend Elf 9, and together they set out to rescue Miku, remembering the good old days and saying how much she reminds them of their old master. However, Noble Red proves too much for the outer scores, and they fall one by one while trying to shake them off, each trading their life for a few more minutes of survival, with only Gary remaining at the end. Before she also gets destroyed. Elf 9, now defenseless, saddened by the loss of her returned friends, is about to be killed by Vanessa, that is, until the last moment where she defends herself with an energy barrier. And it turns out that the spirit of Kara has somehow returned and taken over her body. Music starts playing and it starts building up as she summons a Faust whip and transforms, declaring that she is the murderer of miracles before the episode ends. Delivering probably the most hype moment of the entire series, turning a desperate, hopeless situation into a one-sided smackdown for the ages. Carol may only get 2 character songs, but they are so good and carry so much impact with them, making it impossible for you to watch this and not get hyped. Especially this series of events, making it perhaps my favorite moment of the final season. Sadly, all her efforts are for naught, as she cannot break through to the room where Miku is being kept. And as soon as the divine baby creature outside is defeated, the divine power is already linked to Miku, resulting in Miku becoming the host for the custodian Shemha, wearing a Faust robe fashioned from the leftovers of the Senshojing. However, I'm not entirely sure where they got this from at this point in time, as it was destroyed in Season 2, but let's not question it. And it comes installed with an upgraded version of the mind control device Dr. Furrier saw back in Season 2, but this time it is under command of Fudo. It is also at this point in time that the spell Malark put on Tsubasa at the concert from episode 1 gets activated, as she turns on the gang and flees while taking Shemha to safety. Also the courtesy of Fudo, now directly mind-controlling her. His own daughter, by the way. Genjiro and Yatsuhiro organize a raid with government agents on the Kazanari estate, assisted by Maria, in order to confront him and put a stop to this madness. Of course the agents get disposed of immediately by Noise, and Genjiro faces off against Fudo in a melee fight, while Tsubasa and Maria have a fight as well. Fudo suplexes Genjiro into the earth with ease, and he proceeds to shoot his own son Yatsuhiro, who jumped in front of Tsubasa to protect her, giving his life instead. Being Tsubasa seems to be suffering, as throughout the series she hasn't had the best of times, but at this point, it's just all misery. She betrayed her friends due to brainwashing, and now her father figure has been shot by her actual dad. Jeez. Tsubasa in an act of rage now attacks Fudo, who somehow manages to keep up with her, despite her being a Symphogear user. I don't know how he is this powerful. He is just a human. Where is he getting all this strength from? Is he even a human? Don't worry about it, I guess. After all, Genjiro has shown great mastery of martial arts and trained with the girls on various moments, though him being that strong is always treated as a joke. Which brings me to this point. This show might be a magical girl show, but it never had a mascot. And that is why I believe that Genjiro is a mascot. He's the leader of the girls, and he offered them the gears after all. Anyway, with the help of the Amalgam Road that just got authorized barely in time as we don't want to get her arrested by not filling in paperwork, she takes Fudo out. But before dealing a killing blow to him, Genjiro steps in and stops her, so she won't regret what she's about to do in turning herself into a murderer. Honestly, I'd have let her. The guy has been an asshole throughout the entire series, and even some of the things he did before that in the story aren't really fit for redemption, but I guess he'll get to rot in prison instead. However, this causes Shema, who has been kept docile in the mansion under his control, to be freed of his control and break out. And when Maria engages her, she gets stopped by Noble Rat, who has switched sides. Shema killed them and brought them back alive as true monsters. The three, now being unable to go back to humanity, figured they might as well join her in her plan to turn all of humanity into a personal monster army, because, they reason, hey, if everyone is a monster and we are too, we finally will be accepted by others. I hate these three. Their reasoning and motivations are dumb. If they just didn't listen to Fudo who found them, and they went their own way, they surely would have found a way to get his rare blood somehow. Also, Hibiki being the dummy she is, and wanting to be friends with everyone, surely they would have been accepted. But no, we go all raw with this plan instead, because they can't even reason as a normal person anymore. It is upsetting really. This is the last season, and these are the bad guys we're getting. Sure, Carol was a bad guy who almost killed everyone in existence because of a misunderstanding, but at least her plan was consistent from the start until she lost all memories and gave her body to Elf-9. These three just keep making decisions that result in things getting worse and worse for them. Alright, enough complaining about them for now. Shema summons Yggdrasil, a giant tower-like structure rising from the earth, capable of terraforming the planet to her wishes, and her goal is to take command of the ruins on the moon. And in an attempt to beat her to the punch, the gear users want to use a space shuttle to get there before her. But the shuttle gets destroyed by Noble Red who show up, and when they want to retreat with magical teleportation crystals that they carry on them, Tsubasa intercepts them and knocks it out of their hands, resulting in everyone, all the gear users and the Three Stooges, getting teleported to the moon rooms. Okay, so let me get this straight. Shema wanted to get to the moon rooms to disable the curse of Belial that is cast over humanity, and she made these space-time teleportation crystals and gave them to Vanessa. Now why didn't she just send them to the moon like this instantly? Instead of waiting half a day and sending them to fight the gear users, and accidentally getting the gear users teleported to the lunar ruins as well. Once again it is time to say the following. It is probably the best you don't think too hard about all of this. It makes less sense the more you think about it. It's one coincidence after another. We'll just have to accept it happened this way. Inside the lunar ruins, everyone is separated, and before they know it, they're under attack by the automatic defense system in place. While everyone fights either the machines attacking them or the other team, Maria and Tsubasa are the first to reach the center of the rooms. And in the main room, they find a holographic operating system modeled after one of the late custodians, Engi. Engi explains to them that in millennia past they created humanity, but Shema revolted and became power-hungry, transforming herself, and I kid you not, into Data. Data disguised as language. in order to take control of humanity and use them against the other custodians. Now I hear you say, how does one transform themselves into a language? To which I respond, stop it, you're thinking again. And this is why the custodians created the Curse of Belial, so humanity would lose its unified language and Shema was unable to rebel against them. And this just happened to coincide in time with Phoenix Tower getting destroyed, setting her out on her path to break the curse and reunite with the god she loved. Which is never confirmed who it is, but it is alluded to that it was Anki all along. All this information gets shared with the command room back on Earth, while everyone else reaches the core of the runes, including Noble Red. After a brief fight between everyone, Shema takes direct control of one of the Noble Red members, destroying the interface that holds the curse intact and blowing the roof of the place, sending everyone flying into space. The members of Noble Red end up sacrificing themselves to create a conceptual tunnel between the moon and the Earth to make sure the Symphogear users arrive alive. But it breaks near the end, sending the users crashing down into the atmosphere. All the while Carol has been fighting Shema on her own down on the surface, to buy time and stopping her from activating Yggdrasil's power to brainwash and enslave all of humanity. As with the gear users on the moon, all over the Earth multiple massive trees rose from the ground, and now the entire planet is being covered by Yggdrasil's branches, primed and ready for terraforming. With the gear users crash landing on Earth, the final fight against Shema finally begins. And as the gear users are joined by Carol, and the attack combinations reach new levels of absurdity, it's still all far short in the end. The gear users get defeated, along with Carol losing the spirit once and for all while trying to help to save the Earth, while the Yggdrasil system starts its terraforming process. All of humanity is starting to be taken over by Shema's control, including all the gear users, except Hibiki. She engages in a desperate one-on-one with Shema, resulting in probably the best fight of the entire series, as he manages to combine all the hopes and wishes of humanity with her love for Miku in one final attack, managing to defeat the god once and for all, saving a precious friend, as well as saving all of humanity in the process. However, it wouldn't be Symphogear if there wasn't one last-minute disaster to take care of before the credits roll now, wouldn't it? Shema might be gone, and humanity might be freed from her grasp, but the planet is still being terraformed thanks to the Yggdrasil system. Together they sing their superb songs in harmony, destroy the system, and while the structure explodes they barely escape it alive. Leaving it up in the air if this final act destroyed our gears completely, as it is alluded to, but we don't get any confirmation about this. The episode ends with everyone paying respects to Yasuhiro at the Kazunari family grave. And the final scene with Hibiki and Miku holding hands while they watch a meteor shower, mirroring the end of the very first season. Still not giving us any confirmation if they're actual girlfriends or just really good roommates after all. I guess it is left up to the viewer's imagination, no matter how obvious it might seem. And that is how Symphogear ends. Lots of action, a little bit of cheese with the powers of love, friendship and the hopes of humanity, and a cold punch in the face. Season 5 is a great way to end the series, though I will remain of the opinion that Noble Red is a fairly underwhelming and uninteresting group of characters, especially for the series finale. But Carol's return was glorious, Miku joined back with the gear users, and Fudo completely lost it. It is impressive how every season just ramps up in insanity, with a finale for the ages with a showdown against the god. It is still kinda unclear to me if this was the real threat Adam was afraid of, or if there was more to it. Maybe he simply didn't know that the custodian would have been long dead already. However, that doesn't explain where the other ones are. Perhaps we have yet to find out. Season 4 does suffer a little bit in order to set up the 5th, it feels, as the last season is a rollercoaster ride of action from start to finish, and it is sad there is not something quite like it. But yeah, that is how Symphogear would end, at least for the anime. There was still that gacha game that I mentioned earlier, however, that shut down in January of this year after 6 years of service. It also had a global release, which started in February 2020, only to be shut down at the end of July that very same year. Oof, even for a gacha game, that is very bad. However, all things considered, it is not too weird, as at the beginning of this video I said that the franchise was never in the highest of popularity in the Western hemisphere of the world. An offline version was announced as well, but I'm not sure how far along those plans are, and if that even includes a Western release to begin with. Wait. What do you mean it had a collaboration event with Attack on Titan, Higurashi, Godzilla, and Japan's women's wrestling scene? Those are some interesting choices to be sure. At least the Kamen Rider one makes sense, seeing how the franchise takes some things from Sentai shows. I'm just surprised they never made some sort of Muso action game out of the series. It would work pretty well in my eyes. You got plenty of characters to choose from, and the noise are just cannon fodder anyway. Also a quick note on the Superb songs, as the naming for those changed a few times over the years. Initially in Season 1, it was translated as Swan Song, and then in Season 2 it became Climax Song. From Season 3 onwards it became Superb Song, as it was more in line with the original Japanese word Zesho. While it may be more correct, I kinda liked Swan Song the most personally, it just sounds more graceful in my eyes. Also the incantation for activating the Superb Song includes the word Fine somewhere in the lyrics, which is kind of funny that no one in universe addresses this, seeing its significance to the plot. And speaking of funny translation shenanigans, originally in the past it was a pain to legally watch the series as it was airing. The streaming services only got a hold of it by Season 3, so they had to go back and grab the first 2 seasons and release those 2 first. And then somehow they missed Season 4, and they had to go back and license and release that a mere 2 weeks before Season 5 would be airing. And it was not until I was making this video and researching stuff that I found out that they actually had physical releases for the West. Something I didn't expect to ever happen anymore. But the series would remain silent on the anime front until last year December. A new project named Symphogear Next was announced, which was teased to be a movie. Since it's called Next, it might imply some sort of new generation of Symphogear users, years after the events of Season 5's finale. Will it have Shirobe and Kirika as the senpais for a new group of gear users? Will it turn out that Adam is afraid of an impending invasion of the custodians from outer space and not just Gemma? And most importantly, are Hibiki and Miku still just roommates? Is it just a movie? Is it going to be a series of movies? Or is it going to be a prelude to another TV series? Time will tell, as no year or any further information has been given to us, aside from it featuring new music. We can only speculate until they release more information, that is. And that marks the end of this video, and the biggest video I've made so far, and it is quite the ordeal. With how many stuff happens in this series, and how absurd and nonsensical events can be, it is quite a challenge to condense things down and have them make sense to some degree, and I hope I succeeded in doing that. Though I feel that in the end, this video didn't do the show any justice, and I didn't sell it well enough to you who might be watching. The script alone took several weeks, consisting of rewatching all the seasons and writing things down, and I tried to get a bit more creative with some of the editing, but at times I got rather demotivated and I was afraid I wouldn't be able to complete it. It ended up taking pretty much an entire month to get the video done. At the beginning of the year I told myself that I would make a video every month, but yeah, that ended up failing in the end. Better luck next year, I suppose. But I had some fun with things like trying to replicate the Season 5 opening for the intro at least, and I learned some things in the process too. I just hope that this is not going to be a copyright landmine with all the music that's being used. Nana Mizuki and King Records, please be gentle on me. Well, if you at all made it to this point, I thank you kindly for watching, as it is not a short video like I usually do. I was considering to do it all in separate videos like with the JoJo series I did, but I also didn't want to be stuck to a single series again for half a year. So I figured it'd take a bit longer to just make one big video. And I hope it ended up being something that people liked watching. I think it probably worked out better this way, as with the individual seasons progressing, there is less to say about the characters themselves, as I don't need to introduce them, perhaps making things weirdly short. As you can see that since Season 2, every subsequent season was a bit shorter in this video. Funnily enough, I also found Season 2 the hardest to write for, as at first I got way too descriptive with that part, and I had to trim it down a little bit so it would fit better into this video. And I'm still not feeling 100% certain about how it turned out, but that's just me, I guess. However, on the other hand, if I did make individual videos for every season, I could have gone way more into detail. Well, maybe if I ever revisit this series, I suppose. In the end, once again, I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching. And if you did like it, leave a like or subscribe and all that jazz. You know how things go around here on this side. This is my name is Sora, here to remember you that Chris is best girl, and I hope to see you all next time.